V for victory is essentially sacrificing some today for better production tomorrow. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angi Kinser.
And Angi wants to talk about the V for victory.
Yes. When it comes to your retirement plan, every decision impacts another. So
yes, they're cascading.
But first, you got to do your famous Mark Twain quote, the other one about when you find yourself agreeing with the masses.
This would probably be the most where this fits in the most.
Yes.
And if you find yourself agreeing with the most, it's probably time to reflect and ask yourself what you might be missing. Mark Twain gets the credit for that quotation. I'm not sure it wasn't. Remember, his real name was Samuel Clemens.
Yes.
He wrote under Mark Twain. But it is very, very true. And when what happens, so let's walk through this.
Do you want to talk about silo thinking?
Yeah.
First?
It's an emotional day, guys. I just got off the phone with a family that I've taken care of for more than 20 years, and he's got COVID, and they called hospice in, and so I'm going to do my best to get through this. But it is, I remember teaching Larry this.
Okay.
Right. So what happens? And you and I both lived through this. I mean, you and I both have kids, right? So Barb and I are young, and we start saving and accumulating the few pennies we could put into accounts. And those pennies grew, and we're saving for a better day. Mm-hmm. Now, what Barb and I would call that is accumulation, right? I mean, that's really what it was. Eventually, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to anybody, but eventually the kids left. Suddenly we have more money, right? And some people begin to spend more. Some people begin to save more. And what's really confusing is some people do both. How can you spend more and save more? Kids are expensive. That's how, right? But that's exactly what we did. And suddenly what we were adding to our account didn't matter as much as what we already had in the account. Now, I look at a $600 million plus statement as of the time of this recording, right? So what's in my account really doesn't matter, but it's beginning to, right? I look at that statement and go, seriously? How did that happen? Well, that happens from compound interest. It happens from time. It happens from saving every year, right? I'm probably more immune to it than most people, but it's still meaningful, right? And eventually, whether you like it or not, that statement begins to become part of our identity, right? We know, okay, this could happen or that could happen or this person could win an election or that person could lose, but we still have this statement. And I think what happens to people is they lose track of that. Now, I've spent my entire life helping people with the third step, which is distribution. But that's not the question that you ask. And this is where it becomes very, very, very difficult. 70% of our population, according to Social Security, signs up for Social Security the moment they can get it at age 62. If you have tax-deferred money and you're in reasonable health, that is potentially the worst financial decision you will ever make in your entire life. But what happens is Barb and I receive those statements, and we look at them, and they become part of our identity. We've spent, virtually 30 years. It'll be 40 before it's time to take it out. And we've spent 40 years accumulating, and all of a sudden, somebody's going to tell me to start pulling it out. That's just not natural, right? It just doesn't make sense. And so people, because they don't understand the value of the money that's in the account, will end up looking at or taking Social Security because they don't understand the amount of money that's on the backside that requires in order to put that income. And so Retirement V for Victory, Angi, is really helping people understand, okay, if you want to retire at 62, you retire at 62, we're going to pull out excessive distributions out of your IRA, your 401k, the account value should fall. It hadn't the past few years because the market's been crazy. The value of your account should fall. That's where the V part is. But we're going to let your Social Security build. When you're over full retirement age at 67, it actually grows at 8% per year. I just want you to stop and pause. If I could guarantee you 8%, how many of you wouldn't send me everything you have?
So that's for every year you delay?
Every year you delay.
How long can you do that?
Up till age 70.
Okay.
So if you were 67, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say your benefit was $2,000.
Okay.
Right? So if we're looking at 8%, let's just use simple math, right? That's $160. The next year, it's 160 plus the 8% on the 160.
Oh.
And the next year, it's 160 plus the 8% plus the 8%. And that goes on your entire lifetime. So every time somebody takes Social Security early, they're betting that they're going to die early. I will tell you, if you have zero other assets, there is no larger actuarial pool in the country. If you presume that the tax rates don't change, and I think that's a bold bet, by the way, but if you presume tax rates don't change, and if you agree to die on time at 84 and a half, I know people think that's funny, but that's what the tables are based on. If you agree to die at 84 and a half, and you don't think the tax rates are going to change, right? Take it whenever you want. It ain't going to matter. But if you have other assets, yeah, that's that wild card, right? If you have a 401k or an IRA or other money that's sitting on the side, I think you have totally misunderstood how the tax code works. And when Angie says silo planning, that's what she hears me talk about in the room, where somebody's only or solely looking at their Social Security or their 401k or their IRA. And what I need you to look at is a farm operation of how to put all of this together. And that's what we do for you at the Financial Enhancement. This is not your job. This is my job, right? This is Aaron Rayum, our Director of Financial Planning, and Grant Sullivan and Dean Huddleston, who's on the phone tonight. It's Jamie Burton's. This is what we do as a team to make sure that you're in the right place. But to think that this is a simple decision is just spooky to me.
Why did the tax deferment even begin in the first place? I mean,
you really are trying to poke the bear.
I know. I want to know.
So it's all about avoidance of risk. If I ask you where you want to put your retirement, and this one had more risk or that one had less risk, most people are going to take the less risk, right? The only reason you take the higher risk is if it has a higher return, right? So I don't necessarily think people, I don't think it was nefarious when they did it. I don't think they understood what was going to happen. But in 1974, there was an act that was passed under ERISA, and we really treated women poorly. It was an act that should have been passed. I get it, right? And it essentially meant that I couldn't leave you my retirement funds instead of Barb, right? It made sense.
Oh, I hate that rule.
I know. In 1978, a smart guy figured out how to use that code to create what's called defined contribution plans. So when you think about it, what we used to have and what we grew up with, especially in Anderson, for those of you that are nationwide, we had General Motors. It was here forever. People had pensions. It was just a common thing. The pension was based on the number of years you worked, the income that you had, and your age when you left, right? But all of the risk after that revolved around General Motors, the pension fund, separate from the company by itself. So there's this fund over here that's on the side, and that's why you had pensions. That's why you had pensions that were properly funded one year and suddenly underfunded the next year. And it was because their investment rate return was not equal to what they told the board of directors that they thought they would have. Regardless, irregardless is now a word. I almost used that. Wow. It is a word. They just can't. I mean, welcome
I've
to the
heard
internet.
you say that already,
right?
but who said it was a word?
They. Someday I'm going to meet they,
They.
and I'm going to smack them down. Anyhow, when you look at your retirement funds and how this pension fund worked, the people who are running the pension had to presume what the rate of return was going to be, how long Angi was going to live, right? And to a degree, even future regulation charges or issues that were out there, right? So CalPERS is the largest pension fund in the country. That's California's public employee fund, if you will.
Okay.
Right? They've not earned, the last time I've read, and don't quote me on this, last time I've read, they've not earned over 4% in a year. And their last reduction from 5.75% expected return was to 5.25. Did I mention they hadn't earned 4?
Yeah.
Right. So that drop cost the state of California about $500 million in tax revenue that they had to send to the pension fund. Right. So the idea of getting rid of these defined benefit plans was very much in the company's best interest. Now, the problem is I've got Adam Harder, my CFA, my chief investment officer, my partner, who's been here for 20 years. I got Andrew Thrasher, who has got a degree from Purdue University in financial planning, a chartered market technician, the youngest winner of the Dow Award in history. And I'm an addict who's done this for 32 years. And all of a sudden, we decided in 1980 to give Angi the responsibility for making the investment decisions in our 401k. It took all of the risk off the back of my firm and put it all on the back of the employee. And, you may say that that's okay and that's a good thing. I can give you tons of reasons why I think this was a major mistake. And when I told you nobody in Congress wanted the interest rates to go down, they don't want the market to fall either. There's props going on, folks.